everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures, and today I'm back with day 9 of my 2020 holiday card series. Because I recently moved, I did not have time to use the Squirrels and the Acorn House during the fall season when they were released, so I just thought it would be so much fun to add them to a Christmas scene. So this is what I came up with. I used the Let's Go Nuts Squirrels and also the Acorn House die, and I just added some elements from lots of other Lawn Fawn stamp sets that I will list below in the video description. I just stamped all of my images onto Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm just using my Copic markers to color them in. For my squirrels, I'm using E15 as my darkest shade, blending that out with E13, and then going in with E11 as my lightest shade. I colored all of the other squirrels off camera because I used the exact same combination for them. Just added a little bit more shadow there. I'm blending that out again with E11. For the tree trunk, I'm using E37, and I'm also using the same color on the ladder. This is actually a ladder from a Hello Bluebird stamp set, the Merry Mice, because I didn't have I did have one stamp set from Lawn Fawn that has a ladder, but I didn't have the dies, and it's just always such a pain to cut out the inside pieces. So I just used this one from Merry Mice, and I thought it's just a little bit visible, so it's fine. So I'm just using E37 and E35 to color that in. And I'm using the same colors on the trunk of the tree. I'm blending that out with E33 as well. For my greens, I'm using YG17, YG13, and YG11. And for all of the green shades on my card, this is the combination that I used. Just going in with another layer of the YG17. For my reds, I'm using R30s. So I'm going in with R39, R37, R35, R32, and R30. And as you can see by the little bit of a gray imprint on this panel, this is actually mirror stamped image. The scarf, the little toboggan, and the string, because I needed them to be facing the other way. From the Let's Go Nuts stamp set, they're pulling like a little wagon, but I thought for a Christmas card it kind of needs to be like a sled. So I just used the mirror stamp by Mirror Image, I think it's called, by Whimsy Stamp, and I just mirror stamped those. Then I'm coloring in my yellows, or yellow goals. So I'm using Y28, YR23, Y15, and then Y11 as my lightest shade. Off camera, I also die cut the mini string of lights border, and I colored all of the pieces in the same Copic marker combinations that I'm using now. Then I'm using B02, B00, and B000 as my blue shades. This is the mini string of light that I was talking about. I just used a C9 Copic marker to color the base of the light string, and all of those pieces were just colored with the same Copic marker combinations that I just used. And I also die cut the Build a House Christmas add-on, the little string of lights to add to the Acorn House. I used the what is it called? The Lift Flap Tree Backdrop or Stitch Tree Backdrop. Not sure. I will list it down below for sure. Out of Bristol Smooth Cardstock, and I'm just using Distress inks in tea dye, gathered twigs, and walnut stain to ink blend that. I just wanted a little bit more definition on the center part, but I'm not going to be using the flaps for this card. I just wanted there to be a little bit more color. I just cut the backdrop apart so that I could use the trees individually. And then I'm also adding the same colors of distress inks on the top of my acorn house. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record when I used ink on the rest of the pieces, but I'm just using the same colors on those. I just left out the darkest part for the main part of the house, and I just used a brick stencil to add a little bit of brick detailing. And for the decorative elements on the house, I just used a lot of the ground espresso as well, just to add a lot more darkness there. The walnut stain, I'm sorry. Just making sure it fits nicely. I die cut the picket fence border, and I used white wood grain cardstock on that, and I'm using the same colors of distress ink to ink blend that. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted it to be like a very, very light color, but then I decided just to make it like a medium brown. That's why I held the acorn house in front of it. I wanted it to be darker than the house, so I just added a lot of the walnut stain. For my background, I'm using spun sugar, faded jeans, blueprint sketch, and chipped sapphire distress inks. I just ink blended the bottom with a tumbled glass, and then I'm bringing the darker colors in from the top. I just used a basic base coat or base layer of the faded jeans on all of the darker areas, because I did want to add like a bit of definition to the background, but I didn't want it to be too dark because they're like hanging up Christmas lights. That's not something you would do in the dark. So I'm just bringing in the blueprint sketch. And now going in with chipped sapphire. And I just have to say, I totally adore those squirrels. I hope they bring out many more sets with them. I can just see the same obsession happening as with the mice. If they have like many different like activities they can do, they're just so adorable. And I'm having so much fun creating like different kinds of scenes for them. So yeah, I'm really having a lot of fun using them. I'm just blending the colors back and forth. As you can see, unfortunately, I did forget to wipe off my brush, so I pulled a little bit too much of the darker shade down. Luckily on Bristol, it's not immediately dry, so I could move it out a bit, but I just added a bit more of the blueprint sketch. Then I'm also adding in a tiny bit of black soot at the top. Going back in with chipped sapphire. Then again with blueprint sketch. Again with chipped sapphire. Just, this background really took me a while to blend. Just rubbing off my brush. Then I'm just using the liquid Stardust and also the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, and I'm adding lots of shimmery splatters and also white splatters to look like snow. I just thin both of those down with some liquid glue. Liquid glue, sorry, with water. Getting totally confused here. Just added lots of snowy splatters. And then I also brought in all of the other like scenery elements because they would also be like covered with a little bit of snow. And I'm just adding the splatters to those as well. Then I'm stamping my sentiment. I used the simple sentiment banners by Lawn Fawn, and I didn't have a matching color cardstock, so I used the same R30 markers to color in the banner. I just stamped Merry Christmas, and I'm using the Wow Superfine Embossing Powder in white. Off to the side, I already have my heat gun heating up, and I'm just using a brush to remove any stray embossing powder. Now I'm just running it over the powder until it's smooth and melted. And I just made sure to let it dry for a few seconds, or let it cool for a few seconds, and then I just took a baby wipe to go over the sentiment strip to remove any of the excess anti-static powder, because it can all sometimes dull the color of your cardstock. Then it's time to just add my scenery elements. I added the 2 trees down. Now I'm also adding in the picket fence, just using the hill that I also die cut off camera, and also ink blended with the same colors I used for the background. Making sure the hill covers the parts that I needed to. And then I'm just assembling the acorn house. Off camera, I also cut a little circle to go behind the door, and the die set already comes with a little triangle shape to go behind the window, and I just used some scattered Store Distress ink on those, just so that there's a little bit of a glow behind the window. Now I'm just attaching those two together and then adding it to the side of the house. I wasn't quite sure if I wanted it in the top of the house, but I went with the side, right next to the door. And I wasn't quite sure how I would layer the little step, but first I decided to add the little keyhole. I added some foam squares to the back of the top part of my treehouse, and I'm just setting that down more to the left of my panel. I did want to move it just a tiny bit, but it was already stuck down, so I just left it. Now I'm just adding the additional elements to the squirrels and also the lambs. I just added the wreaths on top. I added the string to the little sled, and I'm adding that to the squirrel that is normally uh, pulling the wagon in the stamp set. I did cut off the string a little bit because it was too long. I also cut off the white border on the top of the sled because I will be adding other images there, and I just always think it looks more finished when you add die cuts on top of each other, when you just remove the border that is separating them. I did the same thing for the scarves that I'm adding to the squirrels, just so that it looks more seamless. And I did the same for the lower areas of the hats, so that there's no white border in the face of the squirrels. Now I'm just adding the tiny one and adding the tree behind, because I just thought it was so cute that, they just got the tree and the little one is just riding on the sled as well, bringing home the Christmas tree that they just chopped down in the forest. Then I'm also adding the scarf to my squirrel and the hat. Has to be a matching ensemble, right? Also adding the second scarf. The what Kelly calls the yay squirrel, I think, is the one that's happily playing with the Christmas lights, because what could be better? He's also getting a Santa hat and another string of lights. Now I'm just adding the light strings to my background. I just really wanted the scene to look super festive and decorated, so I just thought it would be so cute to add the string of lights to the back of my scene. I die cut 2 of them, and as you can see I'm just gluing them down, but since I made a slimline card, the length wasn't enough to cover the entire card. So I just thought I would add them at an angle in the center of the card, but I didn't end up liking it quite as much, so in a little bit you'll see how I fixed that. I just make sure that the like bulbs don't directly overlap as much, so that they're like in the in-between spaces of each other where the 2 light strings meet. And I'm just snipping off the excess. Now it's time to add my images. I'm just using liquid glue for the little lamps. Now I'm just placing them down to the left and right of the tree of the acorn house. And since there are more layers on the right, I just added some thin foam squares to the back of this one. Now I'm just adding the ladder to the acorn house, and also this string of lights. Since it's a thin strip of cardstock, I was able to curve it to the shape of the house. And I just centered it, but then I realized that part would be covered by the squirrel, so I just moved it over a bit. And now I'm adding the squirrel that's just hanging the lights, which is just super cute. Removing the backing paper of the foam squares just on the other elements. And now I'm bringing in the little Santa hat squirrel with the string of lights. Then bringing in the little one on the sled with a Christmas tree. And then, of course, can't forget the yay squirrel with a string of lights, which I just think is so adorable. And I just figured I could just add more lights to fill up the entire card, so that's what I did. This is just a remaining piece that I had already cut off. And then I just die cut a few more to fill up the scene. This is what I will do in a second. But first I'm going in with a Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen in glitter gloss just on all of the ornaments, the lights, the bows, and all of the hats and stuff. And then I'm adding my sentiment strip just with foam squares as well. And here is where I'm just filling in the rest of the card with the light strings just to make it look nice and full. And I really like that the center one is kind of like, it has like a center slope and then the two on the sides. I just think it's a really nice effect. Then I'm just adding Nuvo crystal glaze to the all of the lights and also the street lamps, well, acorn house lamps. And I'm also covering all of the bulbs of the mini string of light with crystal glaze. It's really hard to photograph or show in the video, but in person it's just such a beautiful effect. Then I decided, since it's a snowy scene, that I would add some details with the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. So I just took a little bit on my brush, and I'm just brushing the tops of the branches, the top of the house, the tops of the, what is it called, the picket fence. Just adding a bit of color there also on the part that go horizontal on the picket fence, because that would also be where like snow catches. And yeah, that finishes off my card for today. I had so much fun making this. Oh my god, those squirrels are just the cutest, aren't they? oh my god, I want to make 100 cards with those. I won't, don't worry, but oh my god, I love them. This is so fun. I just can picture them like decorating the house and hanging up all the lights and having so much fun. I really, really hope you enjoyed this one. And in the comments down below, please let me know, are you Team Squirrel or Team Mice? Because I just can't decide. They're both too adorable. Tomorrow I will be back with my next holiday card. I hope you'll join me. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye!